All right, DLS and Chaz, longtime listener, first time writer. I've been harboring this for much too long, and you guys have provided the perfect platform for me to finally share this story and receive the appreciation I've so longingly pined for. This is there is absolutely no surfing in this story, and it should be said that I have no corroborating evidence or witness to this event. So let it be known that this is my own pure moment of bewilderment and disbelief that I now share. The story takes place in a small Vancouver surf town, Vancouver Island surf town. I grew up on this island, and at this time had very few encounters, if any, with pro surfers of any sort other than our locals. There was no surf event this weekend, so it made this encounter so much more unexpected and memorable. The year was 2012. It was also my birthday. I was fortunate enough to have a small art show of work that I created pre-art school together with a few local artists. I was included in a small group show at a small pub on the water next to a bustling wharf/marina. On opening night, we were getting loose. The show was great. We had a blast. Photography, sculpture, painting, and drawings. By 11 p.m., I was wasted. Most everyone had left except the pub was attached to a hotel, so there was a few people passing through who stopped to look at the art before going elsewhere. In this particular transient group, I happened to notice the last person was wearing a leather jacket. His hair was kind of coiffed. He seemed familiar to me. The right height, the right wrinkles, a devilishly handsome smile. A bit more leather than the rest of the group. One might say an air of spunk about him. Lo and behold, Brad Gerlach. Even in the shadows from a ways away, I swear it was him, miles from home. He noticed us in the corner. He turned, looked at me, saw my jaw dropped, and then winked at me. And that was it. He turned and left with his entourage. I wasn't with any quote surfers at that moment who could verify that it was in fact him, nor did I ask around if there was anybody else who had a sighting. I've always just held it to myself, hallucination or not. He was there to me, and he was a winker. Thank you, Brad. Keep work. Thanks, boys. Zoo.
Love the story so much. That's great. And see, this is what happens when you call in. If you've been holding something and you're thinking, maybe this isn't, maybe I just imagined it. Guess what? I mean, if you want, we can get verification on this. I'll hit Brad up. You could hit Brad up and say, Brad, were you at or around Vancouver Island
In
during
2012.
in 2012?
Yeah.
And get some confirmation if Brad was there. If you want.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want or if you'd rather hold it.
Well, let's go seek verification. And if Brad says no, we won't share that feedback.
Okay, great. Yeah, excited. Excited. It'd be great to have a pros in the wild, and we should maybe do this more often. The other segment is a pro reacts to their pro in the wild, where Brad remembering does Brad remember? Does he what was he doing on Vancouver Island? Like what was that scenario, right? I feel we could go to Rochelle Ballard about the spraying the dude, or I feel we could go to back to a lot of the pros and say, here's your pro in the wild. Do you recall this incident?
Well, the funny thing is, I've already gotten their responses at times, like Rochelle Ballard responding to that one where she punked the dude or stood up for the dude who was being punked at
Yeah.
Honolulu Bay. Um, I had one completely offline. Somebody submitted something about Rob Machado that was almost, it was I don't want to say it was disparaging, but it was questionable. You know, it was
Yeah.
kind of like questionable behavior. So I sent it to Rob. I didn't read it online. I just sent it to Rob and I'm like, hey, do you care to comment on this? And he laughed about it and he was like, definitely that was not me. Like, and I have corroborating evidence. I was not there. I have an alibi kind of a thing. And so I sent that response back to the original sender just to be like, hey, just to clear the record for Rob's own namesake, like that was not Rob, you know? But point is, I've gotten the pros in the wild responses and it could be a total segment.
We should fully bring back a pro in the wild responds to being a pro in the wild, except call it something neater off the tongue.
Totally. Completely agree. Um, I had my own version of this particular story that I just read with Brad himself prior to knowing Brad.
Where?
Probably around that same era, like 2012-ish. It was 3rd Street Promenade in LA, Santa Monica.
Was Brad wearing a leather jacket?
Um, he very well could have been. I don't remember exactly what he was wearing, but that fits the bill. And it was kind of a similar thing where I'm out amongst just regular, like, sure, there's pro surfers in LA probably all the time, but that's not where you expect to see a pro surfer. You expect to see them at the beach. And I forget what I was even doing. I was probably on a date or something, going to a movie.
Third
And
Street.
yeah, and he was going up or down the escalator with somebody else, some other dude, and dressed fashionable, just as this writer mentioned. And I noticed him and I'm like, oh my God, that's Brad Gerlach, and kind of like followed him for a few paces just to see what he was up to or where he was going or what he was doing. And then he went on his way.
No
But
winks though.
he lived in LA for a period of time. He
He
lived in
did. I
Venice.
remember I remember thinking Brad was so cool for bucking the trend and living in LA. I thought it
Yeah,
was like a radical departure somehow.
it really was.
Yeah.
Away from good waves is a radical departure.